Help! A poor mechanic found a girl injured in his garage. What happened? It was a cold, dusty evening. The day had faded into grey, and the city's noise was quieting down. In an old, half-lit garage tucked between forgotten alleys, a poor mechanic was closing up after another day of struggle. He wiped his hands, turned off the light, and began walking toward the gate when he heard a faint sound, like a whisper or maybe a whimper. He paused. He could have ignored it. Maybe it was a stray cat, maybe it was the wind. But something inside him said, check again. He followed the sound, and under the shadow of a pile of discarded tires, he saw her, a girl, no more than 16, bruised, bleeding, shivering. Her face was swollen, her clothes torn, her spirit nearly broken. She couldn't speak. She just looked at him, eyes wide with fear and a desperate hope. He didn't ask questions. He didn't think of the consequences. He simply acted. He carried her into his small workshop, grabbed a blanket, and gently wrapped it around her. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from a deep ache that he couldn't explain. He gave her water, cleaned her wounds, and called a local nurse he knew who sometimes helped the poor in emergencies. That night, everything changed. She didn't speak for 3 days, but slowly as her body healed, so did her spirit. She had run away from an abusive home, then been attacked by strangers in the street. She had no one, no direction, no name she dared to mention. But she had found a miracle in a garage, and the mechanic, with nothing but his compassion and a few tools to his name, became her shelter. He made space for her, gave her food from his own plate, and, without knowing it, became the first person in her life who treated her with pure, unselfish kindness. In time, the girl began to smile again. She started sweeping the garage, helping him with small tasks, reading old books he had kept. She found peace in the smell of grease and iron, and in the warmth of someone who saw her not as a burden, but as a person worth saving. Months passed. She went back to school with the help of some kind locals, and soon she began to dream again, for the first time in years. Years later, she stood in front of a university, her name on the honor board, her eyes filled with tears. That old mechanic, still poor, still humble, stood beside her, quietly proud. She had become a social worker, inspired by the moment someone helped her when the world turned its back. This story is not about a hero with riches. It's about the power of compassion. A poor man with nothing gave everything, and in doing so saved a life. Kindness costs nothing but can build futures. Empathy isn't taught, it's lived, and help, no matter how small, can become the seed of someone's new beginning. Let this story remind us that the world changes when we listen to those whispers in the dark, that the smallest gestures, done with love, echo far beyond our imagination. That in every broken soul there's a hidden potential, waiting only for someone to say, I see you, I'll help. Compassion is a universal language that speaks to the core of what it means to be human. It transcends borders, cultures, religions, and socioeconomic backgrounds. Unlike spoken tongues that require translation, compassion is instantly understood by the heart. Whether it's a warm glance, a helping hand, or a simple gesture of care, compassion can be felt without words. It is in these moments, often small and unnoticed by the world, that we see the true power of humanity unfold. It does not matter whether a person is rich or poor, educated or illiterate, powerful or unknown. The heart that chooses to care does not need a degree or permission. It simply needs to be open. In today's fast-paced, achievement-oriented society, people often mistake worth for wealth and significance for social status. But compassion operates differently. It does not ask, what do you have, but instead asks, how can I help? Some of the most compassionate souls live in the humblest of conditions. They don't help because they can afford to. They help because they can't bear not to. It is not pity. It's an inner response, a spiritual instinct to relieve the suffering of others as though it were their own. The story of the poor mechanic who found an injured girl in his garage is a shining example of this truth. He had no formal training, no emergency resources, and barely enough money to care for himself. Yet when he saw her hurt, his first response was not fear or judgment, it was empathy. He didn't ask about her past. He didn't think about how it might inconvenience him. He simply acted from the most honest, pure place of his being, his heart. That's what compassion does. It sees pain, not through the eyes of logic, but through the lens of shared humanity. This quality is deeply educational, especially for children and youth growing up in a world that sometimes prioritizes competition over cooperation. Teaching compassion is not just about encouraging people to donate or volunteer. It's about cultivating the daily habit of noticing when someone is left out, when someone is in pain, when someone is breaking quietly inside. These observations, followed by simple actions of support, build the kind of society where empathy becomes the norm rather than the exception. Compassion also teaches us that the giver benefits just as much as the receiver. Scientific studies have shown that helping others activates parts of the brain associated with happiness. But beyond biology, there is a spiritual peace that comes from making another person's day lighter. That peace doesn't depend on success or recognition. It grows in silence, in private moments where no one is watching, but something sacred is unfolding. Moreover, when we act compassionately, we become role models for those around us. Children watch what adults do more than they listen to what adults say. If they see compassion being practiced, not occasionally, but consistently, they will grow up understanding that the strength of a person lies not in how much they can dominate, but in how much they can uplift. A generation raised on compassion will not fear differences, they will celebrate them. They will not look away from suffering, they will approach it with care. Compassion also has the power to dissolve barriers. In times of crisis, it's not social media fame or political debates that save lives. It's the everyday acts of ordinary people stepping up to help. A blanket offered in winter, a meal shared in hunger, a seat given in a crowded bus. These are the true currencies of a compassionate world. And the beauty is, everyone has access to this currency. No one is too poor, too young, or too broken to give it. The lesson we must carry forward is this: compassion is not just a reaction, it is a way of life. It is a language that teaches us to see others not as strangers but as fellow travelers, not as burdens but as beings worthy of love. And when we begin to see the world this way, every interaction becomes an opportunity for healing. Every day becomes a chance to make someone's life a little less painful, a little more bearable. We may not be able to change the whole world at once, but with compassion, we can change someone's whole world in a moment. And sometimes, that's all it takes to start a revolution of the heart. One act of kindness can change the course of a life forever. We often underestimate the power of simple, compassionate actions, especially when they come in moments of deep pain or hopelessness. But the truth is, kindness, when given with sincerity and without expectation, can become the spark that reignites a person's will to live, to believe, and to grow. It is not always grand gestures that transform lives. Often, it is the quiet, seemingly small decisions to care, to step in, and to say, "You are not alone." Imagine a person standing at the edge of despair, feeling invisible, unwanted, and unloved. In such a moment, even the smallest act of kindness, a smile, a hand offered in help, a word of encouragement, can feel like a miracle. It interrupts the pattern of pain and plants a seed of hope. When the poor mechanic found the injured girl in his garage, he had no way of knowing what that moment would mean for her. He didn't rescue her with any grand announcement. He didn't promise her a future. He simply helped. He gave her warmth, safety, and dignity at a time when the world had stripped her of all three. That single act was the beginning of a journey back to life. Kindness, especially when given selflessly, has a ripple effect. It doesn't just end with the one who receives it. Often, the person who has been touched by kindness becomes someone who offers it to others. In this way, kindness becomes generational, not necessarily through blood, but through spirit. The girl who was once broken and afraid became someone who learned to care for others, not because she had read about it in a book, but because she had felt it in her darkest hour. That feeling became her motivation, her strength, and eventually her purpose. What began as a rescue became a transformation. What began as pain became power, There is also an educational truth in this. Kindness is one of the greatest teachers. It teaches responsibility, empathy, patience, and emotional intelligence, skills that are often left out of traditional education but are essential for a healthy society. When children grow up witnessing or receiving acts of kindness, they learn that strength lies in caring. They learn that helping someone else is not weakness, but courage, and they begin to understand that the value of life is not in what we earn or own, but in how we treat others, especially those who cannot repay us. Another important aspect of kindness is that it often comes without recognition. The mechanic did not help the girl because someone was watching. He didn't do it for praise or to be seen as a hero. His action was pure, coming from a heart that responded to suffering. This purity gives kindness its unmatched power. In a world full of noise and competition, genuine kindness stands out because it asks for nothing and gives everything. That is what makes it unforgettable. People may forget your name, your title, or your achievements, but they will never forget how you made them feel, especially when they were vulnerable. We must also acknowledge that kindness is not always easy. Sometimes it asks us to go out of our way, to sacrifice, or to face discomfort. The mechanic could have walked away, afraid of trouble, unsure of what to do, but he didn't. He chose to be kind even when it wasn't convenient. That is where the deepest power of kindness lies, in the moments when it is difficult but still chosen. This kind of kindness changes people not just on the outside, but deep within. It reshapes their beliefs about humanity and gives them the courage to rebuild their own lives. In our homes, schools, workplaces, and communities, we have daily opportunities to change lives through kindness. Not every moment will be dramatic or life-altering, but we never truly know what someone else is going through. A gentle word, a listening ear, or a small favor might be the turning point for someone who is silently struggling. In offering kindness, we become part of a larger, invisible network of healing and humanity. Let us remember that the smallest good deed can echo across a lifetime. Kindness is never wasted. It may not return in the way we expect, but it always returns, sometimes in the form of a saved life, a changed heart, or a new beginning. And sometimes that one act of kindness becomes the reason someone believes in the world again. Pain is one of the few things in life that every human being understands, regardless of background, age, or status. It speaks in silence, in tears, in empty stares, and in the heaviness of a heart that has carried too much. Yet while pain is universal, it is often experienced alone. People walk through life carrying invisible wounds, emotional scars that words cannot explain. In such moments, empathy becomes the bridge that connects us. It is through empathy, not sympathy, that true healing begins. Empathy doesn't just observe pain from a distance. It steps into it, sits beside it, and says, "I may not have lived your story, but I feel your ache." When the poor mechanic found the injured girl in his garage, he had no idea who she was, where she came from, or how she had been hurt. But what he saw was her pain, and that was enough. He didn't need her story to care. He didn't need details to understand that she was in desperate need of help. That moment defined the very essence of empathy. He didn't just see her injuries, he felt the depth of her suffering in his own heart. And that feeling moved him to action. He cleaned her wounds, gave her shelter, and stayed close, silent when needed, supportive when she was ready to speak. His empathy became her first step toward healing. Empathy is different from pity. Pity looks down, but empathy reaches out. Pity separates the giver and receiver, but empathy unites them. When we empathize, we don't see the other as weaker or broken. We see them as human, like us, and we recognize their pain as something we could also feel. That recognition creates a powerful connection. It reminds us that we are not so different after all. We may live different lives, but we bleed the same, cry the same, and long for the same things: love, safety, and dignity. In today's world, where people are often divided by opinions, politics, and fear, empathy is one of the most essential qualities we can nurture. It teaches us to listen without judgment and to respond with compassion instead of criticism. It creates safe spaces where people feel understood, not isolated, and more importantly, It can prevent suffering from turning into despair. When someone feels seen and heard in their pain, they begin to believe that healing is possible. That belief is often the first step to recovery. Empathy also teaches resilience, not just for those who are hurting, but for those who offer it. When we allow ourselves to connect deeply with others, we grow emotionally. We learn to be patient, to be strong in silence, and to hold space for another human soul without rushing to fix them. These lessons make us better friends, better leaders, and better members of our families and communities. Empathy strengthens our emotional muscles and deepens our humanity. For the girl in the story, empathy became the light she didn't know she needed. She had suffered silently for so long that she had forgotten what kindness felt like. But in the mechanic's gentle actions and his willingness to share in her silence, she felt something stir inside, a memory of being valued, a glimmer of hope. She didn't just heal physically, she began to trust again, to open up, to dream. And all of that began because someone chose to feel her pain with her instead of ignoring it. In educational settings, empathy is just as important as intelligence. A classroom where empathy is taught and practiced becomes a sanctuary for growth. Children who are raised with empathy learn to support each other instead of competing to be better. They learn to see a crying friend as someone to comfort, not as a disruption. They grow into adults who listen deeply, who build relationships based on understanding, and who create environments where everyone feels safe to be themselves. We must understand that empathy is not a weakness. It is a strength that builds bridges in a world full of walls. It doesn't require grand gestures. It often looks like a quiet presence, a patient listener, or a gentle smile at the right moment. And in many cases, it is that silent presence that saves a person from breaking entirely. Pain may be what connects us, but empathy is what heals us. When we choose to stand with someone in their suffering, not to solve it, but simply to share it, we give them a gift far greater than solutions. We give them the comfort of not being alone, and that, more than anything, can change a life. Selfless service is one of the most powerful and transformative actions a human being can offer. It is an expression of love without condition, of help without expectation, and of care that asks for no reward. In a world that often teaches us to measure value in terms of personal gain, selfless service stands out like a light in the dark. It reminds us that the highest form of humanity lies not in what we keep, but in what we give away, even when we have little to offer, and when that giving is done quietly, without seeking attention or praise, it creates ripples that extend far beyond the moment itself. When the poor mechanic discovered the injured girl in his garage, he made a decision rooted in selfless service. He did not pause to calculate what it would cost him. He did not wonder whether she could repay him or if it would bring him trouble. He simply saw a human being in need and offered what little he had: shelter, warmth, safety, and compassion. His workshop, which barely provided enough for his own survival, became a place of refuge for someone with even less. That act, though small in the eyes of the world, became life-changing for the girl who had lost all hope. Selfless service is never about the size of the gesture. It is about the sincerity of the heart behind it. We often assume we must be wealthy, influential, or skilled to make a difference. But the truth is, service begins with intention. A glass of water, a place to rest, a listening ear, or a moment of protection can be the turning point in someone's life. The mechanic did not need to be a doctor, a social worker, or a hero. He just needed to care, and that made all the difference. His service, offered with humility, gave the girl something she had been denied for so long: dignity. This kind of service does more than help the receiver. It transforms the giver. When we act selflessly, we touch a deeper part of ourselves, the part that is not driven by ego or ambition, but by connection and love. That connection teaches us what it means to truly live. It awakens our empathy, strengthens our character, and reminds us that we are all part of something larger than ourselves. We begin to see others not as strangers but as extensions of our shared human family. In educational terms, Selfless service is an essential value that should be nurtured from a young age. Children who are taught to serve without expecting anything in return grow into adults who lead with compassion and integrity. They learn that greatness is not in dominating others, but in lifting them up. They understand that kindness is not weakness, but strength, and they discover that fulfillment does not come from accumulation, but from contribution. These lessons shape communities built on cooperation, generosity, and trust. Moreover, selfless service builds bridges where there were once walls. It crosses boundaries of class, race, and religion. It speaks in actions that are understood by all hearts. When someone helps another person without needing a reason or a reward, it touches something universal. It reminds us that, at our core, we are more alike than different. And in times of crisis, these acts of service become the glue that holds society together. The story of the mechanic and the girl did not end with one act of kindness. It grew into a relationship of trust, of shared healing, and of quiet strength. The girl, once broken and lost, found her path not because someone gave her wealth or opportunity, but because someone gave her care without condition. That selfless act became the seed from which her future grew. And years later, when she began helping others, she did so with the same spirit, quietly, humbly, and with deep compassion. In this way, selfless service is passed down, not as a rule, but as a living example. We may not all be called to save lives in dramatic ways, but each of us has the ability to serve. Every day offers opportunities to act without selfishness, to comfort a friend, to help a stranger, to give time, energy, or attention to someone in need. And when we do so with pure hearts, we not only change lives, we change the world around us. Service that comes from love leaves behind a legacy far more lasting than fame or fortune. It becomes a story of hope, whispered quietly across generations. Healing, both physical and emotional, is rarely a sudden or straightforward process. It unfolds slowly in fragile moments of trust, care, and connection. It requires time, safety, and above all, love. True healing does not come only from medicine or therapy. It comes from being seen, being valued, and being surrounded by kindness. When someone experiences deep trauma or pain, they often retreat into silence. They build walls around their heart, not out of hatred, but out of fear. Fear of being hurt again, of being judged, or of being abandoned. In such cases, healing can only begin when love walks in quietly, without judgment, and waits patiently outside those walls. When the injured girl was found in the mechanic's garage, her body was not the only thing that was broken. Her spirit was too. She was wounded in ways no bandage could cover. She had seen too much, suffered too deeply, and lost her sense of safety in the world. But what she found in that humble garage was something rare, a place where she was not questioned, not pitied, but gently cared for. The mechanic didn't press her to explain. He didn't demand to know who she was or how she got there. Instead, he offered her space to breathe, to rest, and to feel human again. That unconditional care became the foundation of her healing. Healing through love is not about grand speeches or dramatic rescues. It is about presence. It is about sitting beside someone in silence, offering a warm meal, a soft blanket, or a simple reassurance. You are safe here. These small acts carry immense power because they tell the wounded person you matter. And sometimes that message is the very thing they've been waiting their whole life to hear. Love in its purest form says, "You don't need to earn my care. You already deserve it." That message can begin to soften even the hardest scars. As days passed, the girl began to change, not through pressure, but through gentle kindness. Her wounds began to close, not just on her skin, but in her heart. She began to trust again, not because she was forced, but because she felt loved without condition. That is what love does. It doesn't demand healing, it invites it. And when someone is invited into healing with love, they begin to reclaim parts of themselves they thought were lost forever. They find their voice again, their courage, and slowly, their dreams. This kind of healing is especially important to understand in educational and social settings. Many children and young people today carry invisible pain. They may act out, withdraw, or struggle, not because they are bad or broken, but because they are hurting. What they need is not punishment or correction first, but love and understanding. When teachers, mentors, or even classmates show kindness, when they take time to listen and care, they become healers. They may not even realize the impact they're having, but one kind word can stay with a hurting soul for years. That is the unseen power of love. Healing through love also teaches those who offer it. The mechanic did not expect to become someone's lifeline. He didn't see himself as a hero, but in choosing love over indifference, he discovered a strength in himself he didn't know he had. He saw that love has the power to heal not only others, but also the giver. In caring for her, he found a deeper purpose, and in witnessing her slowly return to life, he too felt something awaken inside him, something noble, quiet, and deeply fulfilling. In a world often filled with conflict, indifference, and noise, healing through love stands as a quiet revolution. It doesn't make headlines, but it changes lives. It doesn't seek credit, but it leaves a lasting mark. We all have the power to be healers. We may not have all the answers, or the resources, or the right words. But we all have the capacity to love, to be kind, patient, and present. And in offering that love to someone who is hurting, we may give them the courage to begin again. Healing does not happen all at once. It happens when someone finally feels safe enough to let go of their pain. It happens when someone realizes they are no longer alone. And it happens most beautifully when love is given freely, with no strings attached. That is the kind of healing that lasts. That is the kind of healing that changes lives. True transformation begins when pain is met with purpose. Life has a mysterious way of shaping people through hardship, loss, and suffering, but it also gives them a chance to rise from that suffering with a story worth sharing. Every scar has a voice, every struggle has a lesson, and every broken moment can become the foundation of something beautiful. The most powerful people are not always the ones who have never fallen. They are the ones who fell hard, broke into pieces, and yet chose to rebuild, not just for themselves, but to lift others along the way. This is where pain becomes purpose, and survival becomes strength. The girl who was once found broken and injured in a garage did not just recover and walk away. As she healed, she discovered something deep within her, a new reason to live, not just for herself, but for others who might one day walk the same road she once did. Her experience of suffering gave her empathy. Her journey of healing gave her wisdom, and the love she received gave her courage to give it back to the world. She did not let her pain define her future, but she allowed it to guide her toward helping others. That shift from victim to healer, from silence to voice, is the heart of personal transformation. Often, people believe they have nothing to give unless they are perfect or successful. But it is not perfection that changes the world. It is authenticity. It is someone standing in front of others and saying, "I've been where you are. I know what it feels like to be lost, broken, and alone. But I also know that healing is possible because I found it." That message carries more power than any degree, title, or speech. It's real, it's raw, and it touches the soul. The girl became such a messenger, not through force, but through the quiet strength of her lived experience. She didn't speak from a place of theory, but from truth. And people listened. Transformation is not just about changing one's own life. It's about using that change to create a ripple effect. As the girl stepped into her new purpose, she started helping others, young women who had been hurt, children who had no home, even strangers on the street who carried invisible wounds. She offered not pity, but presence. Not charity, but dignity. She became the person she once needed, and in doing so, she gave her past a meaning that no pain could erase. This principle of turning pain into purpose is a profound lesson in personal development and education. We often think education is only about books, exams, and skills, but some of the deepest learning comes through life itself, especially through adversity. When students are encouraged to reflect on their challenges and channel them into creative, compassionate action, they grow into leaders who inspire. They learn that they are not victims of their past, but authors of their future. They understand that their experiences, even the painful ones, can be used to light the way for someone else. Moreover, transformation through service teaches resilience. It reminds us that no matter how dark a chapter may be, it can still end in light. It shows us that healing does not mean forgetting the past, but using it as a tool to build a better world. People who transform through love and purpose don't just survive, they thrive, and they carry others with them. That is the legacy of true healing. The girl's journey from pain to purpose was not a straight line. It was full of doubt, setbacks, and silent battles. But she held on to the lessons she learned in the mechanic's garage. That even the smallest act of care can change a life, that healing is possible when love is present, and that service born from pain carries the deepest impact. These truths became her compass. We all have within us the potential to transform, to take our hardest trials and turn them into sources of strength. Whether it's through mentoring others, starting a support group, or simply showing up for someone in need, we can use our own experiences as stepping stones for others. Pain teaches us things that comfort never could. And when we rise from that pain with the intention to help, we not only heal ourselves, we become instruments of hope for the world. Transformation is not about forgetting what happened, it's about making it count. And sometimes, the most beautiful beginnings are born from the most broken endings.